There was no word from Abu, whether he had found work or not, and even Isha and Mateen did not ask when their father would return. November dragged along, and Natsia and her mother tended to their duties without protest, even when Seema asked that all the dust-infused rugs in the two-story house be washed and scrubbed by hand. Ramadan was only a few weeks away, and the only respite from the heat came at night, when cooler winds blew in from the Arabian Sea. The vast ocean was only a stone's throw away, but Natsia still hadn't found the time to visit Clifton Beach. One evening after dinner, when the dishes had been put away and Seema had gone to lie in the bed to soothe a pulsing headache, Natsia sat on a bamboo chair outside their quarters, watching Isha and Mateen snuggle close to Amma on the Sharpai. Shirzad strolled the width of the house barefoot from one boundary wall to the other, his hands clasped behind his back. After a while he pulled up a chair and sat down beside Natsia, his body sliding down to mold with the curve of the bamboo. He tipped his head back and stared at the night sky. "I've decided to leave," he said. Natsia rolled her head to the side to see Shirzad better, but only his shadowy profile was visible in the dim light. "Again?" She watched his mouth curve up into a smile. When he didn't answer, she sighed. "Do you enjoy getting beaten?" "I've learned not to listen to you," he chuckled. "I've learned not to go to my mother." "Where will you go?" "Back to the village, to my daddy's house in Punjab, to my grandmother." "How do you know she won't send you back?" "When I was little, I used to follow my daddy everywhere," he said. "She never sent me away. I would follow her around and she would tell me stories as she worked. She'd sew little flowers on dupattas, pink, green, blue. It was my job to separate the threads so they would fit into the eye of the needle. Sometimes she'd give me the needle and let me help. Every time I pulled the needle through, she'd say, 'Shabash, beta, shabash.' Not once has my mother ever said, 'Good job, child, good job.'" How many times had Natsia heard her own mother say shabash to her? 1,000 times. Shabash, beta, shabash. It was a small word, but when the task was difficult, like when she first learned to roll out a perfectly circular roti and cook it on the tawa, shabash had filled her with pride. Or when she had made her first shalwar kameez for the doll that Abu had bought her when she was 9. She made the outfit out of leftover scraps from the sewing Amma did, and when it was done, Amma had gone to the bazaar and bought new lace trim to tack onto the sleeves and bottom of the kameez. Shabash, beta, shabash. "What will you do there?" Natsia asked. "I don't know. We have a school there, or if Daddy wants me to help with other things or put me to work there, I'll do that. Whatever she asks, so long as she lets me stay." He paused. "I need your help, Natsia." Natsia shook her head. "I tried to help you before, and look what it got you. Beaten up, that's what. Even Amma warned me not to interfere, but I didn't listen." She touched his knee. "I'm sorry for the trouble I caused you. You were happy here before I came along and ruined things." Shirzad scoffed. "I got in trouble plenty enough long before you showed up." "That's not the point." Natsia wrapped her arms around herself. "The point is, you were happy here doing what you were supposed to do. I'm sorry for taking that away from you." Shirzad stood up swiftly. "How do you know I was happy? I was happy in Punjab. That's why I'm going back. I'm tired of moving around from one Baji to the next. If I obey my mother, I will be a servant forever. If not for this Baji, then someone else." He looked at the Sharpai, where Isha and Mateen now lay sleeping with Amma. "Look at them. Your sister is no bigger than me. She does nothing all day because your Amma refuses to allow her to work. She follows you around, begging to help, because she doesn't know any better. But if she was forced to do it, would she still want to?" His voice caught, and Natsia was certain that he was crying. "Why can't my mother do that for me? I have many older brothers and sisters who work, so why must I? Why can't I just go to school and play cricket like other kids? It's not fair." Natsia stood and gathered Shirzad in a hug, grateful when he didn't pull away. Why were some decisions so difficult to make, while others could be made in a heartbeat so long as it was not your life? Shirzad's forehead pressed against her ribs as he wiped his eyes with her kameez. She patted his knobby shoulders and wished that he were her brother. She would trade Bilal for this slip of a boy any day. "I will help you," Natsia whispered. "I will help you go home to your daddy. If she could not escape so easily, then the least she could do was ensure Shirzad's freedom. The boy sniffled quietly and squeezed his thin arms around her, making it hard for Natsia to breathe. But she said nothing and stood there in the darkness for a long time, comforting him, planning for him. This time she would get it right. The next afternoon Shirzad slid the bolt out of its socket and lifted the door to keep it from squeaking. Natsia slipped out of the small opening. Now remember, if Amma asks where I am, tell her that I am in the house dusting. If she asks again, tell her Baji sent me to the market to fetch some yogurt. Amma should not be a problem. Let her sleep as long as possible. Install Baji if she asks for me. Just don't let them know where I am. Natsia glanced quickly down the street, then back at Shirzad. Keep Isha and Mateen occupied if they wake up. Don't let them disturb Amma. I know, I know. The day had heated up considerably, despite the cool breeze that had blown in the night before. Shirzad hopped from one foot to the other as he tried to keep the soles of his bare feet from burning on the concrete driveway. Despite his discomfort, he grinned and wiggled his eyebrows. Don't get lost, and don't lose the money. Natsia rolled her eyes at him. Please, I know exactly what I'm doing. She didn't, of course, but there was no reason to worry him. I'll be back as soon as I can, less than 2 hours. Go now. Natsia wrapped her dupatta around her head and secured her sandals. She knotted a small plastic bag tightly, then threaded her arm through the handles so no one could snatch it away easily. She hurried off down the market toward the bus stop at the edge of the Defense Market. She crossed the main road, past the mosque, and wove her way through the rows of shops that spread like serpents through the small valley. The aroma from the body and kebab stalls made her mouth water, but she didn't dare stop. She had less than 2 hours to get to Gizri and back before Amma and Seema would know that she was gone. She boarded the bus in front of the meat stall and chose a seat behind the driver, checking and rechecking her dupatta. Indian dance music reverberated throughout the bus. She kept her gaze fixed on the window behind an old woman clad in a long black chadar, careful to avoid anyone's curious stare. Although it wasn't unusual for a girl her age to take the bus alone, she didn't want to risk doing anything to draw attention to herself. The ride was shorter than she expected. She jumped off before the bus came to a full stop on Gizri Lane, just across from the market where she used to meander through the mishmash of stalls with Sarah and Malia after school. Let Malia still consider me a friend, she thought. Clutching her bag tightly, she ran past the familiar dirt road alongside the cricket field. Natsia darted across the street as soon as a gap in the traffic opened up, and she headed straight for the Gizri School for Girls. She walked down the hall, turning her head away as she ducked past the principal's office. She stopped short at Ms. Haroon's door and took a deep breath. She knocked loudly on the door. A sea of faces bent studiously over the desks looked up in unison. Natsia tried to ignore the collective gasp that spread throughout the room and focused only on Miss Haroon, who sat at her desk fanning herself. Miss Haroon? Miss Haroon's hand paused in midair as recognition dawned on her. Natsia? Natsia forced herself not to step farther into the room. She felt like a beggar standing there in her shabby outfit while the rest of the students were wearing their crisp white uniforms. She tried to keep her voice firm. I need to speak with Malia. It is very important. Natsia fought back the urge to cry as her teacher glided toward her and ushered her back into the hallway. Miss Haroon pulled her into a warm embrace. Natsia, was all she said. Natsia's eyes closed and she breathed in Miss Haroon's perfume. She wondered if this was what the roses and pine trees from Shangri-La smelled like. Tears seeped into the corner of her mouth, and then she imagined she tasted fresh water from the river that flowed through the foothills in Sialkot. How have you been? Miss Haroon was smiling, but her eyes were serious. Natsia pulled back. Please, she said hurriedly as she averted her gaze, I need to talk to Malia. Miss Haroon held on to Natsia's arms. Malia has spoken to me about your family. If there is anything I can do for you, Natsia, you must let me know. Natsia's throat squeezed closed and she could only nod. I mean it, Beta. You are bright. I know your life has been difficult these past few months, but I feel strongly that you need to get off this path. It's not for you. What was she saying? I know it seems as if there's no way out right now with your family destitute, her teacher continued, but you needn't be caught up in it. Whether you know it or not, you can choose, and I know you can choose a better path. Natsia was mesmerized by these words, but what Miss Haroon was suggesting was impossible. What could Natsia do except what she was already doing? What else existed? I don't know what else I can do. My family needs me. Amma needs me. Natsia stepped back and leaned into the doorway, scanning the room for Malia. She locked eyes with her friend, pleading silently. I'll be right back, Miss Haroon, Malia called out to her teacher. I forgot to mention that I was expecting Natsia. It's a family matter. It'll only take a moment. Malia propelled Natsia down the hall, around the corner, and into the girls' bathroom. Malia hugged Natsia fiercely. I'm so happy you are here. I missed you so much. Natsia tried to wriggle free. My clothes, they're filthy. Stop it or you'll ruin your uniform. Malia stared at her friend. I don't care. I'm just so happy you came. She pulled Natsia close again and spoke into her dapada, her voice muffled. When I didn't hear from you after I told your father where your family was staying, I wasn't sure what had happened to you. You know how hard it is for me to get away, and my mother wouldn't bring me to see you. I didn't know what to do. She stepped back, keeping hold of Natsia's free hand. I knew that if I waited, you'd come sometime. Natsia was startled by her friend's reaction. But I thought you'd be busy with school, and with Sarah. I met her at a Sunday bazaar. Did she tell you? She said she thought she saw you, but that it was someone else. It was me. We spoke. Well, don't worry about it now. Sarah has her own problems. Malia shook her head. Now tell me, what are you doing here? Is your father okay? I haven't much time. I have a favor to ask you. Are you willing to help me? Of course. Just tell me what you need. Natsia handed Malia the plastic bag. There's money in here. Have your brother buy a one-way ticket to Multan. It's a long story, but it's for a little boy who is trying to get home. His mother offers no protection. If he stays with the Baji, I'm afraid for him. I'd buy the ticket myself, but you know how it is. Your brother is older, and no one will question him. Remembering that Sarah had told her that everyone thought Natsia had gone back to her old village, she continued, Tell your brother the ticket is for me, that Amma is sending me to live with relatives in Punjab, but she doesn't have the time to go to the station to buy the ticket because of her work. Tell him Abu is already there. Don't worry, I'll have it done for you. Malia took the bag. But how will I get the ticket to you? Remember the address I gave you? We are staying at the same place. But ask Hisham to buy the ticket for next Sunday. I will come back for it. Malia nodded. Okay, but if it's too hard for you to get away, maybe I can ask Hisham to bring me to you. Natsia shook her head quickly. The thought of Malia seeing where she lived gave her goosebumps. She was certain Malia would look past the upscale neighborhood and see only the small servant quarters with the weathered charpai. No, I'll find a way to come back again. She squeezed Malia's hands. You know your mother will stop you, now that she knows I am a Masi. No, she wouldn't. Hush, I have to go now. Natsia hugged her friend, then shook the dapada from her shoulders and wrapped it around her head. When she was sure the hall was clear, she motioned to Malia and stepped out of the bathroom. Malia followed her. They gave each other one last kiss on the cheek and parted. Natsia passed the principal's office, her sandals slapping loudly against the gritty floor. She pushed open the heavy double doors and was momentarily blinded by the intense sunlight. She shaded her eyes as she scanned the busy road for signs of the bus back to Defense. A bus on the other side of the road pulled to a stop in front of the cricket pitch. My bus, she thought. I can't miss it. She ran alongside the road, then dashed across the street when she saw an opening. A horn blared at her. She swerved off the road and scrambled to the berm, where the coarse sand sprayed over her sandals and wedged itself between her toes. The bus began to pull away. Wait! She raised her arms and waved wildly at the men who hung on the back of the bus like monkeys hanging from tree limbs. Wait! But she was too far. Natsia watched in dismay as the bus moved away and disappeared into the swell of traffic. She was sure that Amma must be awake by now. And what if Seema discovered Natsia was not in the house? She backed away from the bus stop to the low stone wall that bordered the front of the cricket pitch and sank to the ground. There was nothing to do but wait.